Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Welcome to a new segment here on the Manic Expression YouTube channel. We are calling it Age Before Beauty. I am Beauty.
I'm Age.
This is Carly.
Hi, this is James.
Hi. And we are going to be talking about something weird.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. I am 43 years old.
I'm 28 years old.
Mm-hmm. And we both love classic TV and classic movies.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're going to be discussing in this new show is how we perceive these things. Because classic TV that I grew up on, like I Love Lucy and the Andy Griffith Show, are not of my generation.
They're definitely not of my generation.
They're far
either.
more removed from her generation.
But they're also, you know, shows that I grew up on too.
Mm. And how we perceived them, how we viewed them growing up, and how shows that for me were first run shows that I could remember very clearly watching, like Friends and Seinfeld, for her.
Well, I was like, what, maybe 2 when they were out? And so now it's okay. It's okay. We'll go get your walker. So now I can watch them on HBO Max, and they're some of my favorite shows. Mm.
And they are now old. They're very old. It's okay. I'm talking about you as well.
It's okay. It's okay. I'll go get my walker too. It's okay.
But perceptions of things change depending on the generation watching the content. And how Carly views something like I Love Lucy is going to be different than how I view I Love Lucy, which I'm sure is different than how my parents did when they were growing up watching it when it was first on.
Well, and what's funny is that your parents would be my grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing too, is that the reason why I grew up with shows like I Love Lucy and the Andy Griffith Show and shows like that is mostly because I was raised by my grandparents and my dad. Mm-hmm. So that's why I even have that type of influence. If I was a regular kid my age, I would probably have no idea what these shows even were.
Yeah.
So that's probably, you know, why we get along so well.
Mm-hmm.
It's because we're both old.
Both old. And for me, having been a latchkey kid growing up, I would watch these shows because when I was living in Southern California on Fox 11, they would just have blocks of, like, an hour block of the Andy Griffith Show, an hour block of Gilligan's Island, Beverly Hillbillies, and then every day, like, 2 different 2-hour blocks of I Love Lucy. Mm-hmm. So it got to the point where I could actually recognize an I Love Lucy episode in the first second of it. I would go, I know exactly which one this is. Because they would just play them over and over and over again, and that's what I grew up watching. And the shows that were on when I was a kid, like Family Ties and Facts of Life, I watched those, and I have virtually no memory of them. They don't, I've never felt the need to go back and watch them. I've never felt the need to go out and buy the DVDs, which, again, if you want to talk about me being old. But those shows did stick with me. So I'm interested to hear, like, what you think of them, considering the fact, like, for me, they were old-fashioned when I was a kid. But I was only as, and this is awful, was only as removed from them, time-wise, as a kid today would be from Friends.
So, when I was growing up, I remember, like, whenever my grandparents were over, I would hear the Friends theme song, but then they would change it, and all of a sudden we'd be watching the Andy Griffith Show. So I would recognize the Friends theme song. I knew what it was, but I didn't know what it was until, like, years later when I was 20. So that's kind of what I grew up with. I didn't grow up with, like, knowing what blocks were. I just knew what my grandparents were watching, because that's what we would watch. We would just watch the Andy Griffith Show because it was on, you know, just what was on the TV. I don't even remember what the channel was called, but we would watch Turner Classic Movies. I remember that TV show distinctly because it had all these classic movies on it. And then if you changed it, you know, the channel down, it had all the classic shows on it. So that's what I grew up with. And, you know, I didn't, I wasn't like you. I didn't have, you know, the, I'm sorry.
Go on.
I didn't necessarily have the type of upbringing where, you know, I could instantly, you know, be like, oh, this is what this show is. This is what this show is. It was more of like, oh, okay, we're watching Grandpa and Grandma's show again. That's just kind of what it was. And then as I got older, I'm like, I really, 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 really like this show. So I started to disassociate what, you know, what kids my age should have been watching. Because I started loving shows like the Andy Griffith Show. You know, my favorite character, and you already know this, is Barney Fife.
Yeah. Because she is very Barney-like in real life.
I am, because I'm awkwardly lovable. And I'm only allowed one bullet in a gun. And it's supposed to stay in my pocket. I'm not even allowed to put it in the gun. But, you know, like, that's the other thing, too, is that, you know, even growing up, my friends would try to, you know, talk to me even about, like, cartoons. And be like, hey, have you seen, you know, the new Ed, and Eddie show? And I'm like, what? I know what Scooby-Doo is. And they didn't even know what the classic Scooby-Doo was. Because, you know, that's the one kid show my dad and my grandparents would let us watch. And that was on Boomerang. That and the Flintstones, like the classic, you know, cartoons. Yeah. You know, and I'm sure you used to watch those too.
Yeah. Well, my mother tells me that my two favorite shows when I was very little were Scooby-Doo and Family Feud.
Yeah.
If you knew the way I grew up, you would understand.
So is that why, you know, you're very combative, but also very good at, like, figuring stuff out?
Solving mysteries, yes. And why I wear an ascot sometimes.
Yeah,
so.
That's good, you know.
But, no, and that is another difference between the way that Carly grew up watching TV and the way I did. You had choices.
Yeah.
I had channels. And whatever was on the 9 different channels that, you know, not counting like UHF, which is a thing that doesn't exist anymore, but whatever was on those channels is what you had to watch.
Right. Well, the other thing too that is crazy to me is that, you know, growing up in the early 90s going into the 2000s is that, you know, we didn't necessarily have choices, but we did have VHSs. You know, so yeah, we had more opportunities to, you know, pick what we wanted to watch, right? But then all of a sudden we get Netflix, we get this big boom in streaming platforms. So of course, you know, we're going to have more opportunities to learn more about these shows and everything. And that really opened up my mind to all these different TV shows because it made me explore more of what my grandparents would watch, because I already had this background of loving the Andy Griffith Show, of loving I Love Lucy, and, you know, even the Red Green Show. Do you remember that show?
No.
Oh my God.